Hi, this is Graphically Alex coming at you with all things fat related. If that's something that interests you, please subscribe. I'd love to have you. And today we are going to go over somebody that may be having a moment where they are coming to realize certain things and where weight normalization may be on the horizon if she continues down this path. So I want to just show you guys, because I typically on the channel for the whole year, really, I've been comparing people within the issue, aka E followed by the letter D, or as I call it on the channel, the toxic ritualistic. I've been comparing them to the Last of Us zombies. But this is an interesting opportunity to show you somebody that is having what I would call a warm bodies moment. So it's somebody who is actively a zombie at the moment, but they are starting to question it and they might actually get out. So I don't think that she's out completely, but I just want to watch and react to what she's saying. And I want to see what I have to say to somebody like her who's at this point. And I want to definitely follow her and see if she does something, if she continues down this path, basically. So she's somebody I want to watch. But anyways, let's go ahead and look into it, and I will give my thoughts. I am somebody who recovered. I am somebody who has weight normalized. I was, at my highest, I was 383 at 6'1". I'm now like around 210-ish for perspective. And I'm doing body comp and it's a nightmare. But that's a different topic for another day and maybe another era, since some of you are speculating what the next era will be, but you're probably right. Anyways, let's go ahead. I haven't watched this one. This is the first one I watched. It's this one, I believe. Yeah.
Being very aware that I was fat. I was 8 years old.
So it says the emotional tax from a lifetime of dieting. So this is the first one I watched. This is where I was like, okay, I need to pay attention here, because she's describing a toxic ritualistic past, somebody that was within binge, that side of the issue. So let's go ahead and listen. I'm just going to respond as I listen, because we're going to go through a few of her videos.
My mom bought me a bikini for the first time, and I cried until she agreed not to make me wear it. By the time I was in 6th grade, she was taking me to Curves for Women with her. And by the time I was in high school, she was taking me to Weight Watchers with her.
Telling you, it's that diagnostic criteria for binge, basically.
My 20s were a blur of the paleo diet and the keto diet and
Did the same.
intermittent fasting.
Did that too.
And carb cycling.
Me too.
And I thought that I had healed a lot of my relationship with food. But I'm starting to realize that I think a lot of what I did was actually suppressing a lot of the negative emotions that I had around food and my body. I found a way to push that shame aside. And at the time, I thought that that meant that I had worked through it. And as I've done an immense amount of emotional healing over the last couple of years, it's time to put the focus back on my body. Because while I love what my body does for me, I love my body as the vehicle for my spirit.
So there's a couple of things that I'm having a little bit of an issue with, and I'm not expecting her to be like super on point. This is just a critique of certain mindsets that she's having. So shame is not inherently bad. Shame is just unpleasant. And I think that that is taught a lot within therapy talk spaces and psychological spaces and all these things, and certain political spheres. Shame is taught to always be a bad thing all the time. Now, you need to be very careful with that if you're dealing with E followed by the letter D, because shame, particularly in binge, it becomes a manipulated emotion. So a lot of times it's something that we play into in order to reinforce ourselves, or it's something that we will create, or we will, especially at severe levels, we will even step into triggering situations or create situations that trigger a shame response so that we can engage with the coping mechanisms within it, which the coping mechanisms are body obsession, bingo, replace the O with an E, and reduction. Okay, or a type with bingo, it tends to be a lot of types of diets and types of things, and you cycle through things. So you're like, I'm doing this, I'm going to try this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. That's a common thing, or the memory of it. So remember, even if you're just obsessing over the 2003 Special K little thing that you tried, that's still that same mechanism in the brain. You're still obsessing, and that's a coping mechanism still. So basically, shame becomes a way for us to engage in one of those three pillars of the toxic ritualistic. And so you have to be careful with it. My advice as somebody who has recovered is that shame is something that must be integrated. Shame is like any other emotion. So what does that mean? It just means it's an unpleasant emotion. There are other unpleasant emotions. Anger can be unpleasant. Fear can be unpleasant. But we wouldn't say anger is always a bad thing. We wouldn't say fear is always a bad thing. That's not true either. Sometimes that keeps us safe. So shame is something that helps us to fit in with society, with our families, with other people, basically. And it has to be kept in balance. Obviously, it can't be too much or too little, or you start to have problems, right? So it's like anything else, pretty much. So I don't think that you need to fear having that emotion, because you can't always control it. But what you have to stop doing is you have to stop having shame around the body be this thing that is on a pill, like it's on a, not a pillar, what is it? A pedestal, that it's above everything else and it's the only thing that matters. And when you're in that zone, that is not natural. So that's taking a natural emotion and making it unnatural. And it's putting it into a DIS ordered place. And when it's so pedestalized, it can then be manipulated and used for other purposes, basically. And it also can make you really easy to manipulate, too. So it's actually kind of dangerous in terms of interpersonal interaction, too, to be that obsessed with it, because you can sometimes, be tricked into spending money on things, or you can accept less than what you deserve in a relationship. If you're having shame, you can have a lot of these different side effects of that. Okay. So just be aware of that. It's not good to pedestalize it. And then even if you're just in an interpersonal conflict, somebody can go to that to use it against you. 1 second, I'm gonna wait for that car alarm to be done. Okay, the other thing that I noticed that she said was vehicle for my spirit. You don't want to identify your body as a vehicle. That is dissociative, that is separating. You are your body. Your body is you. Okay? So that is something, it's just kind of like, from my perspective, as somebody who's, gotten to weight normalization and done all this, it's just a rookie mistake. It's something she's figuring out, but I just want to critique that and let that be known. Like, that's not a very good place to be, because it's a dissociation from the body. So you are your body. Your body is you. If you hate your body, then you hate yourself, basically. There isn't any separation, at least not at this current time, with current technology, with this current life on this current plane, etc., etc. I'm not trying to get all like sci-fi or, super spiritual or anything in this, or at this moment anyway. But the point is, You are your body. So stop dissociating. That's not healthy. Okay.
For my soul to walk through this life, I don't love the experience of being a fat person. And so I am embarking on what I'm calling fat shadow work. And that means addressing all of the thoughts and beliefs that I have about my body, about exercise, and about food, all of the
Okay.
experiences that shaped those beliefs and those thoughts and those feelings. I love you so much. The first time I
So she's basically, in my opinion, what she was saying with this is that she's questioning that sort of matrix. So when you're within the issue, the toxic ritualistic, you exist in a matrix within your mind. It's like a mental map, a mental matrix. I call it toxic ritualistic logic, toxic ritualistic beliefs, right? You have these kind of things and you exist in that. And she's now questioning it. Now, I had this moment right before I fully got out in 2020 where I realized that the reduction was a part of it. And that was like a lightning bulb moment because, especially in the years prior, I had dealt with other triggers to the toxic ritualistic. I had white knuckled it many times and not engaged with bingo when I wanted to. So I had some kind of coping mechanisms to work with, but I didn't understand that the reductive side was a part of it. And that was the one piece I was missing in 2019 and in 2020. I saw it because through the stressful situation of the panini, I was cycling through so many different things. I'm not going to have dairy this week. I'm not going to have meat this week. I'm not going to have carbs this week. I'm not going to have like literally, it was wild. And I was completely isolated, so I couldn't blame anybody else, or I couldn't blame, like, and I was living in complete secrecy too. So I was the only one that knew what I was doing. It was the ultimate toxic ritualistic setup, basically, and I went to it like a moth to the flame, basically. But that's where I could see really two things. One, my body was breaking down because I was so bored, obviously, from, just working at home and just not doing anything ever. I could feel my body's sensations and I could feel that my moods would shift at different times of the day and things became very cyclical in a way that I had never experienced before, that I had never noticed because there was nothing else going on. And then I saw my own behaviors and what I was doing, and it clicked. And that was when I was like, this is a cycle. This is something I'm doing, and I'm doing the same thing over and over again, and I'm expecting a different result. I'm expecting a different result, and I'm doing this over and over again. And I was just like, oh my gosh, and I was questioning it a lot in 2020. And then I finally stopped, So it took a long time of like questioning and all that stuff, and to then finally be like, okay, I'm going to let it go. And the last thing I needed, I always tell you guys, was I just needed to knit. I needed something tangible and like with my hands that wasn't eating. And then that was enough. And I never did it again because I had already done all the other work. I had already white knuckled it. I'd already tried, just viewing it as an addiction. I always advise against that because it's not the same thing. It looks the same on the outside, but it's not the same internally. So if you view it that way, you can play into the cycle and you can just start doing those swings, drastic swings, which is what happened because I was viewing it as an addiction. So I always advise against that, and people really hate it when you say that because people have very emotional attachments to the idea of food addiction. And that's something that I have noticed a lot doing this work. But again, I'm here to talk to people that actually want to get out. So you don't view it that way. You see it as a cycle. You see it as one side is bad, the other side is also bad. It's a multipolar issue. With addictions, it's not. You can just stop drinking. That's it. with food, it's not good to just stop. Okay. Should be obvious, but people lose their brains. Okay. And you have to be aware of that with when you're trying to recover. There are a lot of people that are really weird in the issue, and they will try to reinforce you or say things to you very aggressively, because if you question it, they don't like it because it threatens their sense of security. So you have to be careful a little bit and just be very like, you got to fight for your life. Okay. Now we're going to continue to more of these. 1 second. Okay. I thought this one was interesting too.
People like to say, oh, well, you need to be ashamed to make a change. And I call bullshit on that, because we avoid shame, and making a significant change to your body composition requires a long-term investment. And the way that our brains are wired to avoid shame, using shame to get somebody to make a major change to their body composition is just not an effective strategy.
So this is something that is so difficult for people to understand, because there's really two different sides to this. So I have mapped it out on my channel. I have told you guys in detail. When you are morbidly obese and higher, you get very sensitive. And I don't even just mean about weight, I just mean in general. Like your system is just kind of trashed, you don't feel good, everything feels sharp to you. And your body is always stressed, so any added stress makes it worse. When you're class 1 obese and lower, obviously I'm not including being under in this discussion, but when you're class 1 and lower, you're not as sensitive. So for those types of people, shame can be a motivator, because it can add unnecessary stress to get you going. For people that are morbidly obese and higher, it tends to just put more stress on the body, which can lead to more cortisol and higher levels of, basically appetite, because that cortisol releases sugar into the blood, and then you usually have insulin resistance at that size, and then you just get really, you experience a lot of hunger, extremely so. So it actually can undermine a process. So I'm guessing that, not to be shady or anything, I'm not trying to shame at all in this, but I'm guessing that she's morbid or higher. So I would agree in her case. However, I would just tell her that it may shift down the line. When I was in class 1 obesity, it was my bra era, for those of you who remember. And part of why I called it my bra era was because I felt like a brat. I felt lazy. I didn't want to go to the gym anymore. I didn't want to do anything anymore. I was just like, whatever. Like, that's literally how I felt all the time. And it was like, there were many times during that era that I had to literally like slap my ass to get myself to go outside to go to the gym, especially as it was getting colder, especially as all these things are happening, where it's like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore, because I felt better. So I was like, I feel better, I don't care, da, da, da. And it was like, you're not healthy, Alex. Get your ass to the gym. And I had to like slap my ass and be like, you go. And I felt like I needed somebody to yell at me or something to get me to go, because you have like very low dopamine at that phase too. And so it's really hard to be motivated, because you just don't care that much. And it's hard to understand when you're so big, because you're just like, everything is so serious all the time. Everything feels dark and everything is scary. And it's like a big deal when you laugh at that size. That's why a lot of fat activists are like, I'm a happy person. And they think it's like a flex. And it's like, yeah, there's a lot of happy people that are thin every day. And nobody questions it, because they're just a happy person. But it's a big deal to be happy at that size, because everything feels so serious all the time. And so when you're just a brat like I was, or when you're getting into that class 1 obesity, things lighten up a bit and you just don't care. And so you can get really complacent in class 1 obesity. So I think that's where I would advocate for some people to have a little bit of shaming. I don't really like the visual shaming. I'm not a fan of that, but I am a fan of like habit shaming and lack of discipline shaming for people that are class 1 and lower, basically, unless, of course, they're approaching under and all that, which I'm not talking about that. So I have to omit that from the conversation. But again, I don't love the visual shame, but I think habit shame, consistency shaming, these types of things are good.
And the truth is, you can't hate yourself enough to love yourself.
So I think that this is complicated. Again, this is very nuanced, where when you are morbidly obese and bigger, you have to face downsizing. I call it resistance-based downsizing. So you have to face it as resistance. And you must, because it is very difficult to do. When you are super morbidly obese, you have to make it your top priority. It's not your only priority, but it is your top priority. And it is very important to get it under control, or to do what you need to do to get your health in order, because it is bad when you are super morbidly obese. So it is your top priority. You are working to survive this. So you get it done, period. Morbid obesity, it's the same thing. There's a lot of hormonal issues at that size. There's a lot of psychological things that come up during that time. And negative feelings and negative emotions and fears tend to be more motivating during that phase. So I would suggest feeling your feelings, using that negativity to move you forward. Now, it's not necessarily, again, I don't like the visual, so we don't really look at that very much. I don't really like that. But I do think like certain things like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm at this station in life, or oh my gosh, I can't believe this, that, the other. Or like if you're single and you're like, I don't want to be single, something like that. Those negative feelings, those feelings of dissatisfaction can actually motivate you from a bigger size, because otherwise you won't do it. So I think it's very nuanced. Now, this shifts when you get to the mids, when you become mid-sized, when you're fat but not fat, right? You have that sort of duality. You have to let go of resistance-based downsizing. So that changes. And that's where if you don't, then you'll have what I called on the channel mid-sized princess energy, which is basically you start to victimize yourself and you create all this drama and you become like a theater student, basically. Or you act like a high schooler. You act like everything is the end of the world and nothing's really wrong, but it's because you're trying to create resistance and you're trying to create problems to continue on, or even to maintain at worst cases. And then you'll say things like, everybody treated me so much better after I downsized and I can't get over it, and I'll never look at people the same, and blah, 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 and society's ruined for me because I was bigger and now I'm smaller and now this is what I see all the time. People are trying to create resistance. I will tell you guys, as somebody who's not in the TR, it's all bullshit. That's a bunch of load of crap. But it's from somebody who hasn't shifted out of resistance-based weight loss, so it's complicated. People think of a downsizing journey as static, or as you take a certain step or a certain stance and you continue that stance all the way down. I have tried my best on my channel to show you that it is a dynamic process, that different phases require different things. I've literally split them into eras, and you have to focus on it. And I swear, one of these days I'm going to end up having to write a book, and I'm going to hate you all when I write that book. I'm going to hate it every second of every day. But I'm going to try to make that map out. But you have to be willing to change things. That's the problem. So what I'm saying to her personally now is you might need to engage with some of that resistance to keep going, because it's so arduous and it's so difficult to do. But be willing to let that go later on in the journey. Be willing to evolve as the journey unfolds.
Oh, when it comes to body positivity, I think there can be a point where it's used as a way to bypass your emotional experience, because being fat is often very uncomfortable, both physically and emotionally. And if we're not addressing the uncomfortable emotions that come up, then we're not ever going to be able to change them. At the same time, you do need to have enough self-love cultivated in order to be willing to do that hard work, the inner work, losing of emotional weight. Emotion is energy in motion. Emotion is energy. And when your energy is not flowing, when your emotion...
So I would argue it's shifted a bit. So, yes, don't avoid your emotions, but don't center them around your body. If that's all you have an emotion about, then you're not living a balanced life. There's something off. So often we are trying to avoid other emotions or trying to avoid other things by focusing on how we look or by focusing on what's going on with our body. And sometimes that can be reinforced by physical health issues. And so it becomes very difficult to balance everything. But I constantly taught on my channel, and I still will continue to teach, focus on other areas of life. What else are you upset about? You know, I think you have to use everything you can when you are super morbidly obese and morbidly obese to downsize. And I think we don't want to think about certain things outside of our body. And you'll see this, like, for example, people can be upset about politics in the world. And I'm not talking about any particular time, because people will be upset about politics forever. They have always been, they will always be. So that's not the point that I'm talking about. It's just, plus I want this video to remain timeless, right? So it's not about, it's just using that as an idea, or using like the news or something, or like even just like a negative story about like red rum on the TV or something. That kind of stuff, you see something like that and you're like, ooh, and you're disturbed, and you then go to the body. No, you have to break that. So that has to shut down. And I've seen a lot of HAES dietitians talk about how they're upset with the political situation, and they start thinking about their body because of it. That is very toxic ritualistic. Oftentimes we don't want to think about other things. We don't want to think about our station in life. When I was morbidly obese, I was very tortured about being single during that time. I was tortured about my finances during that time. I was tortured, I called it my tortured era. I was tortured about not knowing what to do outside of the EFAW by the letter D, not knowing who I would become, not knowing how other people would see me, not knowing all these different aspects, not even knowing how to be as interactive with life. I was so focused on getting out of super morbid obesity that when I became morbid, I could start doing things outside of that again. I started to like fit in a chair. At the theater, for example, I started to have different experiences, and my life opened up, and it was very overwhelming. So it's like, feel that anxiety about that and use that to propel you further. You see, you have to use it because it's there. It's hard for people to understand, because that level is not that common. But you have to use stuff like that to carry you forward. And again, it shifts throughout the journey.
Emotions are not able to process, what's going to be very difficult to make a significant body composition change, because we're trying to use willpower alone. And if 95% of your thoughts, feelings, and actions on a daily basis are subconscious programs that are running in the background that you have no conscious awareness of or control over, then how much help is that 5% going to do with willpower?
I understand what she's saying here, and I do think that when I was morbidly obese, it was a time when a lot of the physical aspects of the mental matrix were breaking down, and my brain was more flexible, so I could open my mind too. And that also was part of the tortured era. It's like you have a more open mind and you can see things differently because you're not constantly having to think of contingency plans for your super morbid obesity. So your mind opens up. And so you have to like open up to all that stuff. But you see how I'm not really advising to think about your body. It's just not helpful. There's so much more to think about. And so I would just say, like, definitely process your emotions, definitely go through different things. Like for me, I dealt with such a fear of the future and such a feeling of vulnerability of not knowing what was going to happen to me because I wasn't sabotaging myself anymore. A fear of success, a fear of failure, a fear of it all, a fear of potential in and of itself, a fear of unpredictability. And I think that that's what you have to think about and process. Don't just think about your body.
Against all of that. And if you have been on a diet more or less since you were 10 years old, then you know that those things don't work. You know that that willpower doesn't work. And it's not because you're broken. It's not because you're not good enough. It's not because you don't want it enough.
Willpower on a process level doesn't last. It lasts 12 weeks. So I taught people, and I tell people to schedule your willpower based on certain points of the year that are more difficult for you. That's basically, so think of it seasonally too. There's certain seasons that are easier. January is a common time to start a journey, but it's one of the worst times because in my experience, February and March are extremely difficult to stay strict on a hormonal basis. So people tend to start in January and then fall off in February. Whereas if you would have started in April, it might have been different. And even starting in June, like one of you guys told me when I would talk about the seasonal aspect, you told me that you started your journey in June. And you're like, I didn't even think about that, but it was easy. And I'm like, I'm telling you, it's easy. It's easier. And people can have different physical responses to different seasons and stuff, but you need to get in touch with yours. And I think that it's something to consider too. So there are times where you have to have willpower. Like for me in my vanity journey, every time I've done a reverse diet, I've had to use willpower. It's tricky. That's hard. It's a pain in the ass. And it's very unpleasant, but it's for a set amount of time and it's less than 12 weeks. So your willpower lasts about 12 weeks. So you have to plan it and use it wisely. Basically, that's my advice. But there are certain aspects. Think of downsizing like driving a car. You have the accelerator, you have the brake, you have to turn, right? It's a dynamic thing that you shift with shifting conditions. People don't think of it that way, and that's why they don't succeed, especially starting from very big sizes.
It's because we're still trying to make changes on the surface level with surface level behaviors. We have shadow work to do around relationship with food. We have shadow work to do around relationship with exercise. And we have shadow work to do around relation with our bodies. And those three things combined, I am looking at as what I'm calling the fat shadow.
Yes, so you have fears to face. Fears of breaking the ritual, right? Every time I do this, I make sure that I have everything on the plate. Well, start breaking those rules. So don't have everything on the plate. Make a point of not doing it. I remember when I was working with my mom a while back, I told her, she's like, well, when I have popcorn, she was like, I have to have all of it. And I said, well, leave just one. Leave a single one. And I could see the anxiety from me saying that. You have to face that. Because if you think about it, one piece of popcorn, it's like nothing. It has no effect on the amount, but the psychological stress of it to somebody in the TR, it's something that must be dismantled and you must break it. So you have to think of like breaking those conventions, breaking those things. And you deal with those triggers and you deal with those kind of things. It's the same thing where, like, let's say you're on a CalDEF and you go over on one of the days. You just continue on like nothing happened. That's breaking the ritual. You see, that's something like that. When it comes to like exercise, it's the same thing. You just start small and you're scared and you're nervous, but you go and you just start walking. And then you get more confident because you're like, okay, I can do this. Okay. Then maybe you start lifting or you do whatever you can do at wherever you're at. And you just start small and you just slowly build on it. And that can help you get confidence too. So you have to think of those things too. And then as far as your body. It's just really not obsessing. So I'm not gonna stare in the mirror. So you just make a rule. You can stop that right away. But you just stop. And I'm not saying like, oh, I gotta cover the mirrors. No. Do you see all that emotion? You don't want that. It's no. And then when you get tempted, I don't do that anymore. It's not good for me to do that, so I'm not going to do that. You see? And you kind of shift it. And you have to be repetitive with it all the time. So that's how you dismantle those types of things.
And if you have fat shadow work to do, I'm going to invite you to stick around. I have a lot of shame around this. And I am fucking terrified that this shit is going to end up on the wrong side of Instagram. But one of the most important things about shadow work is that you have to make the unconscious conscious. And that terror has been holding me back from addressing something that I really want to change in my life. So I'll take that risk. I love you.
That's good.
Thank you so much.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, she's waking up. So I want her to continue. I'm like, you're on the right path here. You are. Okay, I'm curious about this one. It's called What's Missing from Most Fat Loss Advice.
Dollars being poured into creating food that will essentially make you fat almost indefinitely. But the reason that we continue to fall prey to that is because we use food as an emotional regulation tool. And for most of us, this started in childhood, which means it's a tool that is potentially your only tool, most definitely one of your main tools and one of your longest lasting tools. So if you've been using food to regulate your emotions for your entire life, then when you try to change how you're eating, you try to change the foods that you're eating and the way that you eat, eventually it all goes to shit.
Yes. Now, I just want to reiterate too, it's not just the food, it's also reduction, memory of reduction, and body obsession. So it's also those two things too, but the food is definitely one of them. And within bingo, it's the major pillar for sure.
Because you never actually figured out how to regulate your emotions without using food. And your emotions don't just stop because you want to change what you eat. And yes, some people do have success. Very few have success long term because most people don't address the emotional issues that create obesity in the first place.
So I want you to understand it's not emotional based. It's a common pitfall because we can't control our emotions all the time. It's anxiety based. So anxiety is a physical sensation. It's something that you can feel because of an emotion. So keep that step in mind. So it's emotion, then anxiety, then binge. So it's also emotion, then anxiety, then mere obsession. Emotion, anxiety, then reduction. Okay? So you have to think about it in that way. So there's that middle step. And when we're really anxious and our body is feeling very physically anxious, certain parts of our brains can turn off and we think very black and white. And at times you can go into like autopilot and stuff like that. So you have to catch yourself there because the emotions are not the problem. And I think that's where we get caught a lot of the time is we kind of like emotionalize the journey, which I have never, ever suppressed my emotions as far as my activism. I have shown them loudly and proudly beyond to a level that probably irritated a lot of people. But I don't care because I was just like, I'm not going to get there by suppression. And I don't think you should suppress. I don't think you have to share it with everybody like I did, but I think you can at least journal or at least meditate on your own feelings and stuff. But you have to like not emotionalize the journey. It's more of an anxiety coping mechanism. So when you shift it, then you can focus on the actual problem, and it's anxiety. So it's anxiety coping. So if you can do a breathing exercise, it will pass. The urge will pass. If you can find something else to believe in, so whether that's a spirituality journey, religion, whatever, something besides the toxic ritualistic that is actually a good foundation for something, then you can think about that or find solace and comfort in that. Or you can, I don't know, I've heard people, like, I've done a lot of meditations recently this year, a lot of grounding meditations and things like that, body reintegration, that type of work. But there's also other psychological coping mechanisms. And you also might need to go to therapy or something for your anxiety. You know, you might need help with your anxiety. So I think we have to acknowledge that sometimes we also have other mental health issues that need to be dealt with outside of the toxic ritualistic, and we're using that to treat other mental health issues and comorbidities. So you have to be aware of that. Like for me specifically, I had hypothyroidism, which makes you anxious. So it didn't really matter what my feelings were, I was going to feel anxious. So just be aware that you can have other physical and mental health issues that can lead to that anxiety, and you have to treat them and you have to deal with them. Okay.
I think it's an important topic to cover because so many other people are struggling with the same problem. And most of the weight loss advice out there does not address the deepest component, and that is the fact that if you don't have any other way to regulate your emotions, you are probably going to continue to struggle with your weight for the rest of your life. So one of the best things that you can possibly do for yourself, for your weight, is to learn how to regulate your emotions. And in my bio, you can find the link for my free 4-step guide to intuitive emotional regulation. That's foundational stuff. That's going to help you to start building the base level skills, the foundational skills that you need to regulate your emotions, to manage your emotions, to process your emotions, rather than eating your feelings, rather than outsourcing your emotional regulation to other people, to substances, to whatever, because if you can regulate your emotions, then you no longer need to turn to food, and whatever other measures you take are more likely to be successful if you address the root cause of the problem. And I love you so much.
So I agree. I think it's good to be able to regulate your emotions for sure, and to process them, and to, you know, not let them take over everything and not completely suppress them. People need emotional balance. People struggle with that. I don't think we're really taught that, and I don't know why we're not taught that, but that's a discussion for another day. But I agree that it needs to be taught, and I agree that it needs to be instilled in society because people have issues with this stuff for sure. But within the toxic ritualistic, remember, it is usually, well, it is centered around anxiety. It's centered around unpredictability a lot of the time, and uncontrollability. So those are the things that really trigger it a lot. But when you're talking about like emotional regulation, I think it's an important thing to do regardless, you know, of like if you have an issue or not. As far as why most people are overweight, it's because it's culturally reinforced to be overweight in the United States specifically. I'm not here to speak on every place in the world, but I'm going to talk about it here. You are culturally enforced to be overweight here. That's why it's such an issue. Okay, so I think I might do one more. This one might be interesting. She called it the fear behind scale anxiety.
If you are at a point where you have been trying to lose weight unsuccessfully your entire life, you probably also have some kind of aversion to weighing yourself. And the truth is that your body weight doesn't matter.
That's not true.
What matters is how you feel in your body, how you feel physically, how you feel emotionally.
So your body weight does matter, but if you want to get into specifics, it's more so about body fat percentage at a certain weight. That's what really matters. So that has to do with your health outcomes. You want to normalize. You want to have healthy ratios. You want to get to a place where for your height and all that stuff, you're at a good place weight-wise. And with the amount of muscle you have on you, you're at a good place weight-wise, basically. So again, once you've reached that point of weight normalization, if you want to continue, you can stay within a healthy range, and that would be a vanity weight journey. So then it shifts. But as far as like your health and stuff, what I will say is how you look doesn't matter. But what you weigh does matter.
It matters that you can do the things that you want to be able to do. And what the number on the scale is, it really has no bearing. on that. So if we know logically that the number doesn't matter, why are we so afraid of it? And the first thing that
it doesn't matter within vanity because you're in that range, but outside of that it matters. Whether you're over or under, it does.
Comes to mind when I ask myself why I'm so afraid of stepping on the scale is, what am I afraid that it means about me? If you struggle with the idea of stepping on the scale, if it floods your body with fear, with anxiety, what are you afraid that the number on that scale means about who you are? Let me know in the comments. And if you're on this journey,
I think the issue of it, particularly and specifically within BINGE, is that the scale doesn't lie. The scale can't lie to you. It's a physical thing, and it's therefore, it can feel out of our control because you can lie to other people, you can lie to yourself, you can control the behavior in the moment, but you can't necessarily control the result of that behavior in that moment. So when you get on the scale, it shows that to you, and it's like a huge slap in the face, or it's like a massive reality check, or it's all this kind of stuff, and it can feel uncontrollable. Even when you are downsizing, there's a lot of times where you will swell, so where it will go up for no reason and you're still downsizing, but it goes up. You have to like be able to see past the trees for the forest when it comes to the scale, and you have to desensitize and de-emotionalize it. Especially if you have to normalize your weight, you will have to track it. So if you are drastically over or drastically under, you're going to have to keep track of your progress, and you're going to have to look, and you have to de-emotionalize. So all of the emotion behind it is, it's fake. It's fake. It's not real. It's something that you're stirring up in your head, like you're in drama class, you're in theater class, you're doing a role play session with yourself. It's not real. It's the same thing with the shock in the mirror. It's not real. One of you guys liked the way I said it. It's an astroturfed emotion. It's fake. Okay? So you need to take that down a notch. And we can have habits, right? So every time I got on the scale, I'm like, or you can be like, okay, well, I'm not going to do that. But then you still feel it in your body. It's because of like that Pavlov, I think it was called. It's like with the dogs, with the food, where they'd ring the bell, and then the dogs would still salivate even if the food wasn't there, because they'd ring the bell every time they fed the dogs. That's what's happening. So it's just like a physical, psychological mechanism built out of habit. So if you just are like, oh, my body thinks I'm going to be so upset about this right now, but I'm not, then it will calm down and it weakens over time, and then you get over it. Basically, it's one of those aspects of the matrix. So it's the same thing. It's also why I don't suggest like covering mirrors and all that stuff. I think it just creates drama around it, and you don't want to create drama around it, because that's feeding into the toxic ritualistic. So if you take the drama out of it, if you take the feelings out of it, because it's not scary, it's not shocking, it's not like, it's fake. You're in theater class when you're doing that, you know. I used to talk a lot about BINGE as Pennywise. You know, the red balloon is floating around you, and you're like freaked. And it's taken the form of something, and it's talking to you in the room, you know, in the bathroom when you're looking at the mirror. That's not real. That's Pennywise. You know, that's the DIS order. So you have to say, actually, fuck you, Pennywise. I don't give a fuck. So, because you don't. Because it's not about that. What you want from it is you want the distraction. You want the excuse to engage in the coping mechanism. That's what you want. It's not about the mirror or the scale. It's not about that. It's about the drama, and it's about the anxiety that drama can produce, and the engagement with the coping mechanism. Because what is something about the scale and what is something about the mirror, we're controlling that. We decide when to do that. Unless if we're at the doctor, which that's where people get so upset, because it's I don't want to get triggered right now. I want to get triggered later. So I don't like that I'm being told to get on this because it's all about control. You see? But if you're not going to be triggered because you de-emotionalize the experience, then it's not going to matter if you are at the doctor and they ask you, because that's what a normal person feels, and that's what you need to be like. I'm not EFA by the letter D acceptance on this channel. I don't accept it, and neither should you. This is real life. Sometimes you have to step on a scale. You need to get to a place where you can. It's not acceptable to cover the mirrors and be in denial all the time. However, we don't want to be obsessed either, right? Balance is the same problem with the emotions, right? But that's just a TR issue. People don't have balance and they view things very black and white. So you got to embrace the gray. You got to find balance. You got to do it all. For my Astro girlies and boilies, engage with the Libra energy. Be balanced and logical. I don't like it personally as a Scorpio rising. I don't like that energy, but I had to get used to it because sometimes it's about creating peace and not drama. Sometimes it's about being balanced. You know, my inner Scorpio loves the drama. It does. So does my Leo. But anyways, it's probably why I have so much drama in my life. I'm just kidding. No, but I embrace the balance of that energy. And I think you should too. And in general, if you're not an Astro girly or boily pop, then just find balance and logic and reason and peace. Okay. I will talk to you guys later. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Let me know what you think. I'll see you soon. Bye.